Hello, YouTube. So I was trying to create a video game, and in the process, I wanted to know how to create a hexagon-shaped map of hexagon tiles. And surprisingly, there's not really a lot of information, not a lot of resources on the internet to help me figure that out. So after a lot of hours of trying to figure out how to make this work, I decided I might as well make a tutorial about it too, so I can cut down the time for someone else who's trying to do the same thing. Hopefully this will help you out. Let's get into it. Okay, so I have an empty scene. There's nothing here. So let's add a spatial node, call it main, save it as main. All right, and we're going to add another spatial node on top of that, which is called grid. We'll also add, we'll also add a camera for good measure. And let's transform this, have a rotation, -70. You can change these whatever you like. This is what I want. So yeah, this is exactly what our scene will look like at the end even. We don't need to add any other nodes or anything. However, I will add something that I will eventually delete too, just to have something to work with here. All right, so let's have that. Let's transform that to 0, and let's give it a material, spatial material. Change the albedo on that to this texture right here. Cool. We got that, and we'll save it as a scene. So we'll save that as tile.scene, and then we'll just delete that. We don't need that anymore. Cool. So on the grid, we're going to add a script. I'm going to create a folder for the scripts first. And just call it grid. That's fine. All right, let's get rid of stuff that we don't need, which is all of that. For the variables that we need a map size variable, which is basically how many tiles our map will extend to. We also need a tile size, which is how big the tile asset is. In this case, it's 1.75. If you don't have mine, it's probably different. And this is something I created myself, so you're not going to find it online, unless I decide to put it on GitHub, which I haven't yet. So 1.75 fits my tile asset. So what we're going to do is, as soon as we load the scene, we're going to call a function to generate the map. We need to create still. So generate map. And first thing you do when you're creating a picture, a map, whatever, you want to clear what you have already, because otherwise, if you generate the map more than once, you're going to have a big mess of all kinds of tiles layered on top of each other and slowing down your code, and we don't want that. Even though the function doesn't allow for it to happen again, I'm still going to first clear the map. In order to do that, we need to say for child in self.getChildCount, self.removeChild. There we go, it's all clear. And then after that, of course, when we're done taking everything off, then we can start putting things on. For x in, I'm going to do a range from negative to positive map size, which sounds kind of big because if you say map size of 20, my first thought is 20 by 20, 20 left and right, and then 20 up and down. But I'm going 20 left plus 20 right, 20 up plus 20 down. And the reason is my map shape, I want it to be a hexagon instead of a square, and that makes it smaller. And so it makes sense for me. For y in the same range, negative map size to positive map size. Then we can say add tile, which we don't have that function either, so I will be creating that now. Function add tile x, y. Now we'll just pass because I need to think for a little bit. Okay, so the first thing we need to do to add a tile is to have a tile to add. So variable tile equals preload an instance of this. The scene that I just recently created. Tile. You'll also need a variable called offsets because working with hexagons we need an offset, and I will show you what happens if we don't have an offset first so you can understand what I'm talking about. Unless you already know about hexagons, in which case, cool. But I'm still going to do this anyway. So, first we need to add the child, and then we need to translate it. Oops, I need to say what I'm adding. Tile.translate. This we need a vector 3. Won't work with just xyz. We need a vector 3 of xyz. X times tile size. Don't need to move it up or down. And then y times the tile size. And that actually gives us everything we need, I believe. Let's test it out and see if I made any mistakes. Select this as the main scene. And we've got, this is what it looks like without the offsets. You can see how the corners are kind of meshed together, and it's all basically a square it's like a square with a bunch of hexagons for each corner. So we're going to fix that by adding an offset. The offset in this case changes every other column. So in half of the columns it's 0. In order to make it half of them, we can say if it's not the x modulus 2. X modulus 2, no matter what x is, if it's divided by 2, there's a remainder. That's what modulus is for, you find the remainder. And if the remainder is 2 or more, you can divide it some more, so there's not actually the remainder. The remainder can only be 0 or 1, which is kind of binary for true or false. So if it's 1, 1 modulus 2 is 0 remainder 1, so 1. But we're saying the opposite of that, so 0. 0, and there is no offset. An even number, it's an offset. If it's 0, 2, 4, 6, it's 0 for the offset. Else, offset is tile size divided by 2. And we can just plug that in right here, plus offset. And now if we do that, we see it's all snugly together like that. There's one thing I don't really like about this, and it's how spacey it looks between the x and along the x value. So I'm just going to change that a little bit. I don't recommend hard coding things like this, but it works for me. Just gonna subtract x times 0.2, and for me that makes it fit a lot more snugly, and that's what I want it to look like. Except, I think I mentioned, I don't want it to be a map in the shape of a square. I want the map to be in the shape of a hexagon, so we're going to add some more functions to add that functionality. First of all, we have to check if the tile that we're about to add is in the hexagon-shaped map that we want. There's probably another way of doing that, but I don't know what it is. If someone else wants to chime in the comments, feel free. There might be some useful nuggets down there, so feel free to check out the comments. So we're going to create the function in map xy, which, first of all, we need to check the radius of the map that we're going for. Map size divided by 2. I'm just going to make that the ceiling of that because it makes an int and safe. So our radius ceiling, we need another function. We also need to say we need to declare this one. We need something called a cube. So while I was trying to do research to figure out how to make hexagons work, there's really not a lot out there. But there is one website that I thought was super helpful. This is on redblobgames.com. He's spent 25 years trying to figure this out, apparently. Starts off with basic hexagon math, and then you get into all kinds of interactive grids that help you figure out what you're talking about. You got different methods for doing the exact same thing. You can use whatever works for you. Offset coordinates is basically the basic square coordinates we started with. Cube coordinates is next, then you got axial coordinates, you got doubled coordinates, and there are other examples here too. I'm going to be using cube coordinates because they work for the way I think and they work for the math I'm using. So I'm using cube coordinates. Down here we got some functions that we can use. Got translating between cube and axial and cube and the regular coordinates. This is basically saying, are you shifting the odd columns every row, or the odd rows rather, the even rows, odd columns, or even columns? Which ones are you shifting? In my case, I'm shifting the odd columns, and I just need the odd columns to cube. That's the function I need right here in order to make my function work. So let's have another function. So obviously this does not meet the syntax of Godot. Let's fix it up a little bit. And I'm just gonna say, yeah, I could just change this and that's it. Vector 3, not 34. That should work. Cube is odd q to cube of xy. And that is cube. Now what we need to check is, wait a minute, too many arguments. I need a vector 2 in there, not just xy. All right, so now we have the cubic coordinates for each tile that we're attempting to place. Now we need to check if cube.x is less than or equal to r and cube.x is greater than or equal to r, negative r rather. And then we can copy paste because we're going to do this 2 more times. Paste, oops, I missed an and, should have that there too. And paste. Now we got x, x, y, y, z, and z. So if it's in the hexagon range, return true. And if it's not, return false. Simple as that. That is, I think, everything we need. If it's in the map, then you add a tile. And let's see how that looks. Ooh, something messed up. Change column and row to X and Y. That works. There we go. Now let's check it out. What's this one? Q? No, that didn't work. What is the mistake? Oh, I need that to be an int. Cool. That'll work, right? There we go. So that's the hexagon shaped map that I was looking for. And if you want to switch between those two, then you can easily do that between square and hexagon, that is, by doing that. And now it'll be a square again. But I keep the hexagon. So this is all I wanted to do with this video. I plan to make this into a series, and I will be getting into more complicated things that I don't have a lot of information on, that I can't find a lot of information on YouTube for, and I'm going to be creating more content. Hopefully this helps someone out. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. Cool. See ya.